Jesus Culture Podcast. This week, we're looking back at Encounter 18 in Sacramento, and we're looking forward to our next conference in Manchester, UK. You'll hear highlights from some of our keynote speakers and a special behind-the-scenes interview with the guys from Elevation Worship. Thanks for downloading, subscribing, and listening to the Jesus Culture Podcast.
Welcome to the Jesus Culture Podcast. Here we are again, episode 6.
Episode 6. The newness hasn't worn off yet. I'm still very excited about this new podcast.
The JCP.
It's like, when you're in a new relationship and it's like that first love and it's really exciting.
This is the infatuation stage. I still very much like our podcast because I'm still in the infatuation stage.
But by episode 10, I'll be over it.
And we'll find out. So we are currently at episode 6 of the Jesus Culture Podcast. Great to have you with us. Episode 6 and episode 7 are going to be part 1 and part 2. Some great stuff coming up. I am Banning Liebscher, the lead pastor at Jesus Culture Sacramento, the director of Jesus Culture, joined as always by
Becky Johnson. I'm youth pastor of Jesus Culture Sacramento, co-host and funny sidekick to the Jesus Culture Podcast.
And newly
Mom of 2.
Mom of 2. That's
Ooh.
right. Can you give everybody out there in podcast land?
Yes, I actually...
Because you haven't... We recorded a whole bunch of podcasts before.
Yep.
But you've been out of the office and out of commission because...
I had a baby 5 weeks ago. I actually was getting tea at a place in our town here, and
Wait, you are like actually out getting tea?
It was like, it's a tea place.
Like you went to a tea place.
Okay, it's a tea place, and the owner is a listener, and she said, hey... I had the baby in the carrier. She's like, hey, is that the baby you just had? I heard that on the podcast.
Come on.
Here we go. So anyway, I guess without getting tea. It sounds proper, doesn't it?
Was there anybody under 60 years old in there?
No. I had a baby 5 weeks ago. His name is Julian. So now I have a boy and a girl. And for all the moms out there who have jumped from 1 to 2, oh my gosh. Yeah. For all the parents out there.
It's a breeze.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, what's the big difference between not 1 and 2, but boy and girl?
Oh my gosh. Well, the diaper changes are
different.
A lot more dangerous.
Yes.
I have been peed on more times than I ever thought that I'd want to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's awesome. Obviously, he's still a baby, but there is a big difference already in a boy and a girl, and even just how I feel about them.
Yeah.
Like Derek says, I baby him way more than I did.
Oh gosh, totally
I'm
true.
kind of just like Putty. He's like my boy.
Yes,
yeah,
that's my boy.
I'm like, don't let him cry.
Can't do anything wrong.
Yeah, and Derek's like, let him cry. It's fine. It's gonna make him tough.
Suck
it's
it up.
Good.
He's a man.
So different already.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, welcome back.
Thank you.
To the podcast, episode 6. We are actually headed into a conference this week. So we actually record these a little bit beforehand. We're headed into the conference.
In 2 days.
The next 2 episodes are actually going to be kind of Jesus Culture Encounter Conference, Jesus Culture Podcast.
Yeah, because we get to bring the conference to them if they're not already joining us, which I'm sure all 52.
I'm sure they are, absolutely. So we're going to be able to be bringing you clips of speakers. We're going to sit down and interview some people that are writing books or doing stuff.
Testimonies.
I very much look forward to our conferences every year. We do one in Sacramento, we do one in Manchester. Mm-hmm. They really are a highlight of the year for me. It's amazing how when you kind of gather people together that are hungry for God, that want to go after Jesus together, that have a passion for worship. It is crazy what God does.
We're doing something new too. I'm excited. The youth conference.
That's exactly right. We have a couple new things actually going on.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't new, but we're recording our album.
That's exciting.
And the last 2 years, we've been recording our album at church on Sundays. And this year, we're headed back to our conference to record. I've been listening to the songs, and they are just so good. We've actually we've been singing them at our church.
That's cool.
I just am so stirred by them, so I'm excited about that. But 2 new things. One we'll get to about the youth conference, but another one is we're partnering with Q. Q is run by dear friends of ours, Gabe and Rebecca Lyons. Great organization that's just tackling cultural issues, starting conversations amongst the church. Causing people to be active in culture. And we're actually doing Q pop-up, a Q conference pop-up in the afternoon. And pretty excited about that. We'll let you know about that. You'll hear some of those things.
Yeah, it's going to be so cool.
And then also, simultaneously, we're actually kind of running 2 conferences that will merge at night into 1 conference.
Yes. My city it was a local youth conference here that's been going on for 4 years, and this year we adopted it because the people who started it, they transitioned, but they wanted to keep it going. So we get to put it on this year, and we're so excited. We sold out, which is awesome. We're going to pack out this cool little downtown theater and just go after God. And I'm excited to see what happens. It's crazy
to think that a Jesus Culture Conference now has a teen conference attached to it, because
I was going to ask, is that weird?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird because, we started in 1999 as a youth conference. Mm-hmm. And then a few years in, we started kind of tagging on the word young adult. So for years, it was just youth and young adult. That was who we were. We were a youth and young adult conference. And then now as we moved down here and planted the church, and now we're like a body of Christ. Obviously a ton of young adults would come, but so many people from all ages now. And so it's weird all of a sudden. I'm like, wow, we actually have a youth conference. That's bizarre. So
we're meeting elsewhere. And it is a lot different than what's going on at the main. Like, I have a slingshot and I'm going to be throwing like emoji balls out in the crowd. They have a guy, I have a team, an amazing team. They go, let's have a guy in a morph suit just run around.
In a what suit?
A morph suit, like that body skin, like...
Oh my gosh.
I know. And I'm like, why? They're like, oh, just because that's awesome is what you do.
There's no reason for stuff at you. They're like, why? Because it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's awesome. So we have a guy in a morph suit running around. They are going to, they're doing marshmallow golf from the stage.
Okay.
Yep, they're going to hit out marshmallows with the golf clubs. And then we're going to encounter God.
Yes.
And we're going to worship. It's going to be amazing.
That will not be happening in the main conference, but that's all right. We're serious over there.
Yeah, you guys are serious.
We're serious. So we're excited. We're excited to be able to bring you what's happening here in Sacramento. We're going to be in a month in Manchester doing our conference in the UK for Europe and the UK. So that's going to be incredible. But we're excited to be able to bring you different interviews, different speakers, some testimonies of what God is doing, not only at the conference, but from the people that are there, and just really tap into them for the Jesus Culture Podcast. This is what I'm praying for the next 3 days. I'm praying that you would have an encounter with God. I'm praying that you would have a moment with God that changes everything. Whether you've been serving God for 40 years, whether you're a new believer, whether you're young or old, my prayer is that you would have a fresh encounter with God that would change everything in your life.
So when we're dealing with the word prophetic, it's not just a gift where you come up to the front and you go, I need a word of encouragement. It's a gift that changes the government of your life. When God speaks to you, you plus that word equals a different result in life.
See, it doesn't take any faith to retweet, but it does take faith to post a tweet that is a declaration to where we are going. I don't care about what your past is. I need to know what your future is. I need to know how you are going to release words that are going to shift things into the future.
At the heart of every issue of brokenness in the lives of people in every nation of the world is the fatherlessness that they exist with, not knowing their identity because of a connection to a perfect God.
You cannot heal what is hidden, church. Secrets lose power when they exit the dark. Because Satan uses the secret as shame, condemnation, and bondage, but he brings it into the light because God's like, I'm doing a new thing. I'm going to heal you.
Hey everybody, this is Cody Williams, one of the directors at Jesus Culture. I'm sitting down this afternoon with some of our friends at the Elevation Worship team here at our Encounter Conference, Chris Brown and John Sal. Hey guys, how you doing?
What's up?
Great.
Thanks so much for coming and spending this weekend with us.
Of course.
And, we're pumped to have you guys. Obviously from Elevation Church, just a small little church in somewhere in America. No, you guys are an incredibly influential church. How long has Elevation been in existence?
So we're going on our 12th year of ministry.
12th year.
Going into the 12th year. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about each of your, like, what was your role been? How long you been part of the church? What are you currently working on, doing right now?
Yeah. So I came to church about 8 months in to the church. My wife and I moved up from South Carolina. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we moved up to be a part. I knew Pastor Stephen from high school. So we kept in touch, through college years or whatnot. And when he went to start the church, knew what was kind of happening, and we felt led to come up and just be a part of it. And so we've been there, it's 10 and a half, almost 11 years now. And it's been wild trying to figure out how in the world to lead teams and, to lead a growing church that has struggles and challenges and at the same time having a lot of fun and watching God, bless things. And so, yeah, that's me.
John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been part of the church for 4 years now. I moved from San Antonio to Charlotte to do the apprenticeship program called Prodigy at the time. It's now 2K2. And so I came on staff and started serving at different campuses and all. And part of my role now is traveling with the team, but also helping oversee youth worship, culture, and development on that side. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Were you guys both on the Outcry tour?
We were.
Yep.
Yeah. And we're getting ready to do that again. So our bands kind of got to connect this last year.
Absolutely.
A little bit. And we loved you guys, man.
It's been fun, that's what's honestly is super cool about Outcry. I was just talking with someone the other day about, for us, I feel like of course I love the vision of Outcry, which is, a big champion of the local church. But I think it's pretty unique seeing God help the global church, the church at large, do away with a lot of boundary lines, and that happens so much just through the relationships that are occurring team to team, artist to artist, or whatever, behind the scenes. And we don't have a lot of context of what it's like to be on other tours with a lot of other artists. Outcry is pretty much it for us. We're relatively new to touring in general in the last 2-3 years. So it's really our only experience, but it's been amazing because I feel like God's doing something, building these relationships between different worship groups. And so we're excited to be out in April again with Bethel. It'll be our first time with them, and, grow the family.
I think what I love about all of that's happening with just the idea of the tour is just that it's all from local.
Absolutely.
Everybody's coming from a local environment and learning in a local environment and growing in a local environment.
Right.
How has the local church affected you guys as a band?
Well, I guess we're kind of the opposite of you guys in the sense of how we came about. So we started as a church as opposed to Jesus Culture. Of course, coming from a church, Bethel, but we didn't necessarily know, hey, one day we're going to be traveling. One day we're going to, we had a vision early on in our church. We want to write songs at some point for our church. And so we started doing it right away. And it was very localized and it was very in-house, and and we didn't really even sing the songs in church because they were awful. So we're cutting our teeth, learning how to, write songs, write corporate worship songs, and all the while doing Jesus Culture songs and Bethel and Hillsong. And because, end of the day, we just want to, we're going to serve our church, whatever is best for serving our church. But over time, as our teams have grown and our songs have grown and developed, God's, allowed the songs to move beyond.
Life on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Beyond our church. And so we're just trying to be good stewards of that influence and platform now. So we're new to going beyond our church, and kind of being, traveling, touring, the whole deal. So, but I feel like our context will always come back to, at the end of the day, we're just we're on staff as worship leaders, and that truly is it for us. And so, this morning I'm emailing, texting with the team, checking in, hey, what about this dynamic for this weekend's worship set? I know you wanted a co-lead at your campus in Florida. How can I help with that? That's I'm not just focused on the traveling thing or the touring thing, and nor do I want to disconnect, I guess, from what God's just doing and building leaders within the church.
I'd love to talk about your guys' process and developing worship leaders, developing songs, developing Sundays. I mean, these are all things that every church worship leader, pastors, musicians, teams. Let's just start with like developing your worship teams and songwriting. Let's sit on some of that, and then maybe we could talk a little bit about services.
Sure. So developing, teams, to start there, we have like a pipeline. So, we have, of course, you can join the worship team through, auditions, that type thing, be a part. And then there's an internship that, we could do where we're, of course, identifying like, hey, where's someone at in their level of, development or potential, where is that? John Sal, as he mentioned, came through an apprenticeship program that we have. So that's aimed at an age group that's a bit, older than our internship. You can intern at, I think, 16, maybe 17, starting there. So those are all like, avenues that we're looking to identify, young leaders in the church and help grow them. And then beyond that, like as soon as they're stepping on the team, really, I mentioned, we have multiple campuses. And so at that point, it's the worship leader's responsibility to kind of help pastor and oversee at that campus their team. And so I think the tension that we face is in our kind of rapid growth is how do we best equip our worship leaders to be good pastors as well. Because, last year, this won't be the case like year over year or anything, but last year we added, I think, 3 or 4 campuses. So that means 3 or 4 new, it's a lot, like 3 or 4 new leaders that in some ways, like we have to put that position, in place. And then in other, and another way is like, are they equipped like fully? Well, no, like I wasn't equipped fully when I came on. Someone, believed in me. Our pastor, sat me down with Wade and with Mac and just said, you can do it. I believe enough in you and we're going to figure this thing out together. And so it's weird 12 years in to say we're still figuring some things out, but truly we are. And but I think, like at the end of the day, we want to see people believed in. We want to see people, their potential reached. And sometimes that's, all the time it's a cheerleader for them. But I think being a coach for someone is being able to identify like, hey, I know where your weak parts are, and let me help you grow, in the weak areas, and all the while like cheering you on and saying you can do this. And so it's a systems thing right now that we're honestly trying to figure out how to sustain that. Like, what's the best system to put in place with 17 different like worship leaders who are 17 different pastors? What's our system to be sustainable to help pastor those?
It's 17 campuses. How often do you meet with like the entire worship team, like all the leaders? Are you gathering like as one, or is there a lot of like this worship leader's working with this team at this campus?
Our model over the last maybe 2 years has kind of shifted practically, where talk about development for a massive team. We've really asked that the campus pastors really help some of that development as well, to equip them to become pastors for their context and their needs. So we were learning, hey, not everything is the same approach at every single campus. So we've kind of like taken a step back and said, hey, this is probably going to be a better idea and a better approach to developing newer worship leaders. So their purpose and their focus isn't necessarily on platform, but what they're doing outside for that community. So that's like one little practical thing. But to keep the unity and the vision of where we're at, we do meet once a month, and one of our worship pastors helps roll out just the direction of where we're headed, maybe, some practical things as far as handles to lead.
We're getting ready to go through Battlefield of the Mind. So Joyce Meyer's book together,
that's cool.
So I think this year we're going to focus on going through some books together when we meet once a month. And just, of course there's always like insecurity that each of us are are feeling and dealing with at our own levels. And so I would say that's kind of an ever-present thing if we're honest, like in worship teams. And so like I've dealt with it, John Sal's dealt with it, down to Rosie, one of our worship leaders. And so I think for us, it's like, hey, just having honest conversations and being open and like, hey, let's not feel shame about this or like don't address it necessarily. And therefore like you kind of bottle it up and start to feel shame. Well, I shouldn't feel this way because no other leader or no other pastor is. I mean, anybody who's,
come on,
you know, so we all deal with it. And I think like that's our objective this year, is to try to have open, vulnerable conversations. And so a tool for us is like going through some different books.
I love that. Transparency, creating that environment where it's just health.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day. Do you guys, how often are you guys songwriting together? Is it like a continual, just like, hey, let's get together, let's songwrite? Is there specific settings that you guys are trying to create and schedule certain times?
That's an ever evolving thing we're trying to figure out too. So it's a bit more seasonal in approach. We have historically, like over the last few years, taken a couple times a year where we're getting away, doing some writing on retreats. Our pastor is actually like really, really integral to our songwriting. And he wasn't like for the first 5 years, mainly I think 50% because he didn't want to micromanage, and then 50% because it was the first 5 years of a church plant,
which was insane.
And so there's several other things to focus, on. But I would say maybe year 6, year 7, he started to dip his toe in the water a little bit, and in a way where he was like, I don't want to like put too much in. But again, he comes from a worship background. He comes from a writing background, and what he's been able to add to us has been, and to our songs has really been like so significant. And it's interesting because I don't know of too many other pastors that are doing it. But if I look back at like hymns, historically in the church, then it would be, John and Charles Wesley. Like you'd be crazy to think like, to say, well, you're a pastor, you shouldn't be songwriting. And they're standing up writing the hymns that are so significant to our faith and have been for the last 200 years. So, it was an interesting dynamic as he was getting involved initially, I think, even from him, because he was like kind of not wanting to, like I said, micromanage.
Right.
But he's added so much. He knows like where we're headed as a church, in general, like the season we're going to go into. We're currently in the studio firming up some songs to record in a little bit. And the process is just ugly and messy, and it's 15 different rounds of the same bridge, but slight variations. I do think one of the things that I've learned in the last few years of writing for our church is just like not settling on my first draft or on our first draft. And so like, I think Leonard Cohen like apparently wrote 74, maybe 76 verses of Hallelujah.
Wow.
And we hear 4.
Right.
And I've been able to read some of the verses that didn't make it into the draft, and they're better than anything I could ever attempt.
That's amazing.
But I think the principle of, when I first started out, it's this balance of, oh, well, God inspired that. I put it down on paper or whatever, and that's it. Like, that must be it. Well, is it it? Let's come back to it in a couple of days, or let's come back to it in an hour and see. And more often than not, there's something you can say the same thing, but say it a little better. And so I think that's been Pastor Stephen, his involvement in our writing. He's very driven in that sense, whether it's a sermon or whether he's writing a book or whatever. So when it comes to songs, he's like, he's not willing to settle.
Talk to us about, just in the spirit of development, you've worked with some of the youth teams and done some stuff like that. We got a lot of youth pastors and youth worship leaders listening in. What kind of advice or input would you have for that?
Yeah, I get the privilege with my wife to oversee what is a fairly new thing in our church just with youth. And so over 2 years, we've kind of experimented, hey, what is really going to draw in students, in our community in Charlotte, same for outside, trying to keep this mass vision as a central, team, but then also allowing worship leaders, youth pastors at their campus to operate. But one thing that I feel like is a clear purpose of mine is actually seeing this gift in youth really stirred up in that moment. And it can be kind of very emotional for them because they feel like opportunity is the biggest win, in their life. And so just building a relationship with them and creating a community is probably one of my biggest focuses, just because I think what that'll do, the seeds that'll be planted in their lives now are actually going to, create something down the road. And that is true for me. And so I feel like that's so clear as we get to do that for them. So I think, as we choose and select, okay, we want these people to kind of be up front, it models maybe an example of a student, worship leader that we would really want to be that for the rest of the team. But for them, I would say the goal isn't that you are comparing yourself to Elevation Worship, Hillsong, Jesus Culture. You are your own individual. God has gifted you with very specific things. And so I believe that if they can unpack that with their relationship in God, rooted in Him, I think that's going to be the best kind of product and result when they show up to the platform. So that's kind of my heart with developing our student worship leaders. And again, just kind of creating the community of like, hey, we are a team, we support each other, we can get behind others that are maybe in the opportunities to lead. We can adopt this mindset of like, not everything that's important is on the platform. Maybe something outside in the lobby, going to connect with that new person is a better win. Creating an atmosphere so that they're comfortable is a better win. So that's where we're at now. It's like not easy because again, they are youth and they can get emotional and feel like, I didn't get rostered this weekend or whatnot. I didn't get a chance to lead, but that's what we're trying to build on.
Yeah, and what you said about giving them the proper win, not setting their expectation as like, oh, I'm 17 and my win is to be this 28-year-old who's traveling with Elevation Worship, or obviously have models. Be looking at Kim Walker-Smith, have those models that you want, but then I think helping identify a person's win for them in that season is so key, because if not, they constantly feel like they're not measuring up. And I think that's our job as leaders, to help them identify, but it's also a hard job, if I'm speaking for myself, sometimes for myself to identify what is this person's win. And sometimes that's a hard conversation too, setting someone's expectations properly, clearly, so they don't ever feel this like, I can't make it. I'm never measuring up.
Yeah. Just a basic, broad question. What does it mean to be a worship leader?
When I step on a platform and invite the Holy Spirit, when I invite God to use my heart, use my voice, use my brain, I'm asking that He would, directly make me a vessel. And that can sound so broad too, but every time in every kind of context, I believe just saying, okay, Jesus, these are people you've put in front of me for a very specific reason, through my relationship with you, through the whispers that you've given me, through the vulnerability of where I stand and how I feel. Help me to draw them closer to you. And so that's my heart every time I step on. And it's not easy, because the little petty things and the things that we define successful in this kind of big global church that's out traveling, that's out releasing music, can kind of cloud your mind and make it, no, it needs to be that I'm the best songwriter. It needs to be that I have the most influence on a platform. It needs to be that I'm in this position at this church. And I think those things can kind of get in my brain. But for me, the core of what I'm really doing, the core of my role as a worship leader is to say, okay, I'm literally my voice is being used, God directly speak through me, directly sing through me, and that people would kind of take one step closer to you, would actually feel like, oh my God, there's a burden lifted. There's peace right now in just, his presence. And so that's where I'm at. That's my journey, man.
That's so cool. Chris, what about you, man?
Our role, we were talking about, as worship leaders, so much is to model what it means when we're in the presence of God to actually be present. Let go of like what happened this week. Let go of what, your circumstances are saying. And if I can show up, I'm going to be in my spot where God has called me to be, and I'm going to be present in this moment. Then, for a 30-minute worship set, I think what it means to lead worship is to be so engaged and so present in that time. Because what's going to happen is that if I'm in my place where I need to be, as opposed to thinking about 1,000 other things, or thinking about how I sound, or thinking about how, is this song going over well, or trying to get a read on the room if they're vibing with the song. If I'm present, then I'm, one, modeling what I think it means to be a worshiper, but also I'm taking my post and I'm taking my place as a leader to be truly like a priest and to help make this connection of, I'm just here to help you connect with God. So if I can extend one arm to you and then one arm upward, then I'm here. And so I think worship leaders so often, especially in today's culture, again, models are so good, models of other worship teams or other worship leaders, but then it's so easy for comparison to creep in and set that aside and be so confident in, hey, what's the best way I can serve these people? I don't know. I think that's what I'm trying to learn how to be right now as a worship leader, is to, who am I? Let me be fully present and fully engaged with that, because that's how I'm going to best serve everyone else.
Absolutely. If people want to find you, check you out, connect with you, how do they go about doing that?
Instagram's probably the easiest way, I reckon. Elevation Worship, or Chris.Brown, D-O-T.
The real Chris.
The real Chris Brown. There it is.
That's right.
Send him to the real Chris Brown.
Yeah. There's another guy on there you can find too. He's got good stuff.
Some other guy.
Yeah.
What about you, John Sal?
John Sal B. At John Sal B.
John Sal B. Is it J-O-H-N or J-O-N? Okay.
Follow
awesome.
The chronicles of my kids.
There
on
it
my
is.
Instagram feed.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best. Come look at photos of my kids.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You guys are the best, man. Thanks for hanging out with us this weekend at the conference.
Oh, man.
And just being a part of this special weekend for us at a hometown conference. We've loved having you here with us. And
Thank you.
Hope to see you again.
Thanks so much.
Hey, podcast listeners, if you're feeling inspired by all that took place at Encounter Conference Sacramento, Encounter Manchester is coming up March 8th through 10th. Visit encounter18.com for more info. That's encounter18.com. Or catch the live stream in partnership with God TV.
Hey, podcast listeners, this is Brian Japhett, the children's pastor here at Jesus Culture Sacramento. We heard some incredible stories of all that God did during the Encounter Sacramento conference, and we wanted to share some of them with you. So what I did is I went out into the attendee line to capture some testimonies for you guys to hear. We truly believe that testimonies stir the faith of others to believe God is on the move in their own life. Here is some incredible testimonies from the things that God did at Encounter Sacramento. All right, so tell me, what is your name and where are you from?
My name is Megan Snyder, and I'm from Richmond, California.
And is this your first Jesus Culture Conference?
It is, and not my last.
And not last. So tell me, give me a testimony from today.
So today, Becky Johnson at the My City Conference was talking about saying yes to God and what's on the other side of saying yes. And so I gave God my fear that has been controlling my life all the time. It always controls my life. Irrational fear, rational fear, whatever fear is always something I struggled with. But today I gave it to God. I said yes to God. And then at lunch, signed up for my first missions trip, first time out of the country. And in July, I'll be going to Africa.
What is your name, where you're from?
My name is Annalisa Cook. I'm from Lodi, California.
And is this your first Jesus Culture Conference?
No.
Okay, how many have you been to?
Probably like 5 or 6.
Veteran.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us, what is going on this weekend?
So I remember coming back in the day when I was in youth group, and that was when I had my first like crazy encounters with God, and now I'm a youth leader, and I was a part of bringing our youth group,
So
and
awesome.
we had one of our girls, actually this one right here, she got healed. She was getting coffee, and the guy at the coffee cart like got a word of knowledge for her. You want to tell him, Abby?
Okay, so what is your name and how old are you?
My name is Abigail, and I'm 14.
Okay, so Abigail, you got healed today. Tell us about what happened.
It was actually yesterday. I was at a coffee shop, and they asked me if I have neck pain. This one here, huh? Yeah. And
A coffee shop inside?
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I actually do. And he's like, do you have any right now? And I was like, yeah, a little bit. So he prayed for me, and it was like halfway like better. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And so he prayed for me again, and then it was all the way better.
And how long had you had neck pain?
Like all my life, actually.
All your life?
I've always had like neck and back pain. Like, I don't know why. It's just kind
So
of
if you were to rate the pain level before they prayed from a 1 being nothing to a 10, what would you rate it at?
probably 7.
Like a 7? And after they prayed, both times?
It was like 1.
It was a 1. It was gone.
Yeah, it was all gone. My mom, she has lupus, and so she has migraines all the time, and she's always down and stuff. And so he's like, oh, do you have migraines? And like when he was praying, he like mentioned my mom being sick. And so I told him, I was like, my mom has migraines and stuff, and like she's like really sick and stuff. And so he prayed, and I texted my mom, and I was like, the craziest thing just happened. So I explained to him what happened, and so she's like, I actually had a migraine this morning, but now it's all gone.
And she's back home in Lodi.
She's back home in Lodi.
An hour away.
We hope you enjoyed these amazing testimonies. If you attended the conference and have a testimony for us, we want to hear it. You can share it with us at JesusCulture.com/share your story. Again, that's JesusCulture.com/share your story. Thanks for listening.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that Encounter 18 recap. Again, that was part 1. So we're going to be back with part 2. Make sure you tune in for that and you're subscribed to all the shows that are on the Jesus Culture Podcast Network. Connect with us on social media. We're always doing fun stuff on Instagram, giveaways, connecting with our listeners. So you can get on at JC Podcast and check us out and let us know who you are, where you're from, and what you think of the podcast. And then we will see you guys for Encounter Recap Part 2.
No whisper can accuse, no rumor can